Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Ryden. How often do we start each day totally aware of our surroundings and still take what we have at our disposal for granted, like hot and cold running water, potable water, available on demand whenever we want it? But what if we didn't have that luxury? We're joined today on Global Book Network by Virginia DeFrancisco, who's written a charming book called Waiting for the Water Train. It's the tale of young Emma who learns the value of water conservation, and it's a book that serves as a lesson for all of us. Virginia, thanks so much for joining us today from Irvine, California.
Yes, glad to be here.
How much of Virginia is in the Emma character?
I grew up from kindergarten all the way through third grade in a town without a well. There is a well in the book, but I grew up without a well, and there was a daily water train.
Hmm.
And if the water train didn't arrive, we didn't have water because it was a small mining town, U.S. gypsum mining town in the Mojave Desert of California, and no well.
So obviously that inspired you to write this tale. You knew what you were
Big
writing
impression.
about.
Yeah.
How does Emma's story help children to understand hydrogeology and the importance of water conservation?
Yeah.
What's in the story that allows them to do that?
Yeah, I put a well in this story because I wanted it to run dry. And so there's a layout, a spread that shows an aquifer and, the well being, and it's drilled down and it hits sand. And so there's no water left. And so that's the picture that helps them. And there's a lot of back matter for activities in the classroom for teachers to use about hydrogeology, but the story just shows the well running dry and the faucet turns on and there's no water.
Hmm. What's been the reaction from your readers or from their parents, I guess?
Well, teachers especially, because it's a useful book for teaching about this to a young age. I've heard that it's been used all the way up to fourth grade, fourth grade, because it's California history and in fourth grade. So it leads to that, about the water available in California. So I've had good reaction from teachers.
Good. Now, you've worked with anxious children during your career as a school psychologist. How much of what you've seen in anxious children contributes to your writing?
Yes, they have a more global anxiety because it's so prevalent now, talking about climate change and the problems of the earth. And they express that during my sessions that I work with them. Not all of them, but uh, as they get older, they do more so because they hear more. They hear more. And that's another thing that I always caution teachers when they use my book is not to overemphasize that we're running out of water because I don't want the kids to have that kind of anxiety.
Yeah,
I
no
had a
kidding.
lot of that anxiety growing up.
I wonder how much of that, it seems like kids these days are more anxious.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, generally, not just about the climate. Yes, they're definitely more anxious. I think I contribute a lot of it to not always having plenty of time to interact with other children and to run around outside freely, like we did. I used to climb mountains. My dad would just say, take the canteen
Yeah. And
and
don't
go
come
with
back till
somebody.
dark.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a little kind of like a little herd of kids out there in the desert, and we just ran wild. And we went together, and we were told, get home before dark
Yeah.
and take your canteen.
Boy, what a different world, huh?
Yes,
With all these kids and their anxiety, it must be a real thrill for you when you see a breakthrough.
yes, yes, yes. I encourage children to speak from their hearts, and learn to say what they're feeling and to listen to the others, whether it's adults or other children, to what they say, their heartfelt words. And once they do that, well, just like all of us, if we're in therapy, I mean, I'm a school psychologist, but, I have groups or individual sessions for kids that are suffering from anxiety and also just special education children that are having trouble with curriculum, with schoolwork. And so my job really is to get them learning ready, whether it's from anxiety, or just, the ability is usually they don't believe in themselves,
Mm. A
you know.
lot of adults don't believe in themselves.
Yeah. Yes.
Is this your first book?
It's my first book, but I have two more coming out.
Okay.
Uh, yes, one should be out this month. It's about a woman who's been using a wheelchair since she was a toddler, and she travels the world uh, using a wheelchair. And sometimes she's with family or friends, but a lot of the time, um, she's traveling alone. She's the bravest person I've ever met.
Mhm.
I mean, absolutely the bravest person and a wonderful, wonderful person. She set a Guinness World Record while you and I were in lockdown. She was traveling the world and traveled to more countries in a year than any one using a wheelchair ever had. So she set a
Wow.
Guinness World Record. So I wrote a book about that because I was reading her blog and I was impressed. And so I texted her or emailed her, could I write a children's book about her? And about 15 minutes later, she said yes. And she's come to visit me now. She's a ambassador for the free wheelchair mission that provides wheelchairs and the book providing free wheelchairs. And then I have another one called Carl St. Clair's Piano Naps. He's a the Pacific Symphony Orchestra conductor for the last 35 years, and he's retiring. And I was at his birthday luncheon for the Guild, and he was telling how he used to take naps under the piano while his aunt played the grand piano. And it just struck me, like the music got inside him. And so I asked him if I could write a book, and he was thrilled. And so that's coming out before he retires.
Well, now you've been very prolific now. Now, when did you finally, after so many years in your career or in your life,
Yeah.
what prompted you to finally just put it down on paper? The Waiting for the Water Train and the other books that are coming up. What made you just finally sit down and say, I've had this on my mind for a long time. I finally want to just get it down and get it out. What prompted you to do that?
Well, I was in lockdown and I didn't have anything to do. I was working online as a school psychologist part-time, but I was kept asking myself, uh, what can I do that I've never had time for? So I thought of embroidery, sewing, all those things that I used to do. But then all of a sudden I thought, you've always said you wanted to write. I've written all my life, but uh, not seriously or thinking of publication. And so I sat down and I wrote 90,000 words that year, probably not much of it very good, but it was very therapeutic, and it occupied my time.
Just writing about what?
Oh, everything. I kind of, well, the first book, that I wrote, actually, The Water Train was part of a chapter of a middle grade book that I'm still revising, and it's got a different angle now. But I was advised by a critique of an editor that she said, this is a picture book, this chapter. And so I thought, okay, yeah, I did that. And I did think the visuals, rather than just the text, supported that book more. And then I could take it to younger children as well. And one reason I'm writing for this book is it's for future voters of California, because there's always a bill that none of us understand about, at least I don't, water infrastructure. And we need it here because 70% of the little rain that we get runs off into the ocean without it recharging the aquifers. And I give the farmers of the Central Valley a lot of credit because they've figured out a way. They work hard to flood the fields when they can and recharge the aquifers that are running dry. There is this is called a trifecta year. There's a third year that there's a big snowpack in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and that's great. And so part of the state is having, more water, and but there's still parts that are in significant drought. But that also gives the chance of floods because there's no infrastructure. Well, there's not none, but there needs to be more to catch the water and not flood when you don't want it to flood.
Mhm. That's a very
So,
complicated. How do you get that across to children? I mean, because that's kind of what you want to do. You're talking about future voters.
right.
Do you do
And
it
so
through the,
that's why I want them to learn about aquifers, that if the aquifers run dry and there's ways to recharge them when we have water, and to the canals that bring water to the big cities and from the Colorado River, it's shared basically by three, four states. And there's always a big negotiation about the states and what percentage of that water they get. And obviously, Los Angeles is a big water drinker. So anyway, I want them to know that there's ways of replenishing the aquifers that we draw. The groundwater actually is where most of our drinking water comes from. There's really only 3% fresh water on the planet, on the earth, and about 68% of that is in polar ice caps and glaciers, and the rest is in the atmosphere or rivers, lakes, ponds.
wow.
Yeah. So we don't, and also I want to press on kids that, and I have little experiments that do this, that there's no new water. There's no new fresh water. What we have is what so we have to protect it from pollution. We have to be able to catch it so we can drink it. We have to be able to reclaim it so we can use it to water plants and things without it necessarily be potable. So there's a lot they need to know for future voters. And I'm talking mostly third, fourth grade. I mean, I'm not going to go into kindergarten classroom and talk about that kind of thing. But I do talk about, there's water in the ground and that's how it gets to your faucet. And so that's about as far as I go with young children.
I want to go back to what you said a little bit about making it a picture book. The illustrations by Svetlana Holovenchenko really add to the story. It's interesting that they're in watercolors, it looks like anyway. What was it like working with an illustrator, and how did you convey to her what you were trying to get across, and were you pleased?
Yes, Svetlana lives in Germany. She's Ukrainian. She now lives in Germany. She fortunately came to live in Germany long before what's happening there, but she went to art school in Russia, and she's extremely talented. And I know other authors, and I saw her work with another friend of mine, and I said, "Can I use your illustrator? Do you mind?" Of course not. So I got in touch with her, and so we worked, you know, across the Atlantic,
Mhm.
and I'm going to meet her hopefully in October. Um, so anyway, she's so easy to work with. She's a professional. She's done this before, and anytime she would send me a spread, if I needed any changes, she would do it. Just like that. I mean, with no question. And that's actually how we worked on the aquifer spread because she didn't know anything about aquifers. A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And groundwater. So she illustrated that with what I wanted. I wanted to show that it was pumping mud now, not water, the well. And so it was wonderful to work with her. Wonderful.
In the minute we have left or so, you wanted me to bring up one point about the LA fires, which you've actually had to go through, and whether they were using salt water in
Yes.
fighting those fires.
Uh,
What was that all about?
Yeah, I don't live close to the fires, about an hour above, but of course,
Closer
people,
than me.
yeah. And they did run out of fresh water to fight the fires, and they did use salt water in desperation. But it's not good for the ground, the salt, putting it on there, and it also corrodes the equipment. So it's not used all the time. Fresh water is what's needed to fight fires. And LA ran out of water. The hydrants were dry.
Mm. Well, it sounds like you've got a new book there about firefighters fighting. I don't know, brainstorming here about a story about fighting fires and tying in water
They're
conservation.
so
That's
brave.
huh?
They're so brave. And there were wonderful photos of
Oh,
them
yeah.
out carrying people out, just fighting fires. That's a good idea.
There you go. I just want to credit in the acknowledgments. Folks, if you're looking for a charming book with an important message for your kids, get a hold of Waiting for the Water Train. It's available on Amazon. Virginia, thanks again for joining us.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thank you for spending a few minutes with us on Global Book Network. I'm Paul Ryden. We'll see you next time.